In America in 2025, you have money, but you can't even buy the most essential goods. Walmart is closed. Walgreens shelves are empty. Online prices doubled, scams everywhere. You think it's just inflation? Not quite. This is the result of a series of changes unfolding on the global chessboard, and you, the ordinary American, are the first to suffer. Canada has just imposed a 35% tariff on American goods, an unprecedented rate. They are not alone. Many BRICS countries that used to tread carefully are now tightening up, retaliating with the very goods you once took for granted: gas, medicine, food, electronics. Supply chains shattered, prices skyrocketing, goods disappearing. And 10 states are becoming red zones, places where people can no longer shop, not because they're poor, but because there are no options left. Watch the video now to see if where you live is on today's list. Number 1. New York. No one expected the name topping the list of unshoppable places in America to be New York. It sounds unbelievable. A place once proud to be the shopping capital of the world, where just a few steps could get you anything from bread to cosmetics, from cold medicine to luxury coats. Yet today, right in New York, millions of residents cannot buy the most basic necessities for daily life. And no, this is not the problem of the super rich. On the contrary, it's the workers, the retirees, the families living on modest incomes who are left behind. Since early 2025, a wave of budget retailers like Walmart, Target, and Family Dollar have closed stores in the Bronx, Queens, Staten Island densely populated areas where purchasing power is no longer attractive. Major supermarket chains are also scaling back, prioritizing central locations where tourists still visit. The result? People in the city outskirts must take the subway for hours just to buy a pack of diapers, a box of cold medicine, or a bottle of shampoo that isn't too expensive. Everywhere they go, they see fewer goods prices soaring. Not because sellers want it that way, simply because shipping costs have doubled within just 8 months due to the global crude oil price spiraling out of control, a consequence of energy instability following international crises and export restrictions from the Middle East. A shipment that used to cost $600 for in-state transport now jumps to nearly $1,200. With the 35% tariff Canada placed on American consumer goods, and America retaliating, the cross-border supply chain New York has long depended on is completely strangled. Worse still, when you fall into scarcity, the government pulls back. When deep cuts to SNAP and Medicaid within the Big Beautiful Bill were passed, hundreds of thousands of New York households lost food assistance, lost medical support. For those already scraping by, it's like being pushed down another rung. They cannot shop, not because they don't want to, but because there's no way, no nearby stores, not enough money to order online, no healthcare subsidies to buy medicine. They must choose between breakfast or insulin, between paying for heating or buying diapers. And the scariest part is, even with a roof over your head, you can still feel as insecure as the homeless on the street. Hearing this, do you still believe New York is a place with everything as before, and when people can't buy, can the country still claim abundance? Ironically, compared to a small Canadian town barely a kilometer long, the people there still have access to grocery stores, bakeries, pharmacies, diners, family shops. They live slowly close to each other, goods displayed outside without fear of theft. Not much money, no cutting-edge technology, but real access. Something New York now finds luxurious a normal life. The question is, if even an economic center like New York cannot protect its people from a consumer crisis, what about less prosperous places? Number 2. Michigan. It's hard to believe, but in Michigan today, a vial of insulin is harder to find than the latest iPhone. Once considered the pharmaceutical hub of the Midwest, it's now become a medicine desert, where patients no longer know where to find their daily lifeline. Roads, once crowded with Canadians driving over for cheaper, abundant medicine, are now empty. No one's coming, and there's nothing left to buy. The collapse began in late June 2025 when a proposal from Washington was announced, potentially imposing 200% tariffs on imported medicines to bring American pharma back to glory. Immediately, Canada, one of the most critical partners, struck back, imposing 35% tariffs on all goods, crippling the two-way supply chain. And pharmaceuticals were hit first. Thousands of pharmacies in Michigan, reliant on ingredients equipment, even finished medicines from the north, suddenly saw their supply cut off. Within 2 weeks, nearly half of the state's independent pharmacies had to suspend imports. Walgreens, CVS chains in small towns narrowed offerings to just a few vitamins and basic cough medicine. Essential items, insulin, blood pressure meds, heart drugs, completely vanished from shelves. Meanwhile, prices rise daily. A vial of insulin from $80 has shot past $240, not counting delivery fees, if any. Medicare can't keep up with the new prices. Seniors already tightening belts now split doses in half or stop treatment altogether. Many families sell their most precious possessions, an old car, a cherished watch, just to buy enough medicine for a few more weeks of survival. In desperation, many turn to the black market. On social media, secret groups spring up, where people trade medicines of dubious origin smuggled from Asia, Eastern Europe. No one wants fake drugs, but when there's no choice, sometimes they risk health for just one more month, one more week of life. American pharma companies are also withdrawing from states with volatile tax policies. We can't shoulder every cost of political decisions a representative declared, and so Michigan, once the medical backbone of the region, is now abandoned by the very hands that once fed it. In modern America, where you can call a ride order food buy electronics, with a click a vial of life-saving medicine has become a distant, unattainable luxury. Number 3, Ohio. Once Cleveland was a place where you could step out and buy anything from a mop to a winter coat. Not the richest city, but a livable one where you could trust the person behind the counter. Family stores and Clark Fulton Shop Rose and Slavic Village summer flea markets once gave residents peace of mind. But now that simple feeling being able to walk out and buy what you need has become a luxury. Since early summer 2025, after Washington's trade tax clampdowns and harsh retaliation from Canada and BRICS, the consumer goods supply chain in the Midwest suffered sudden disruption. Cleveland, never on the priority list of major retail corporations, was quickly pushed aside. Shortages didn't strike all at once, but crept in item-by-item toothpaste recommended by doctors suddenly out of stock across the system. Chinese rice cookers no longer imported family towel orders delayed for months due to border tax jams. People thought, no problem, we can still order online. But then they realized what seemed convenient held too many risks. In just Q2 2025, the FBI recorded over 5,400 e-commerce fraud cases in Ohio, most occurring in Cleveland and surrounding areas like Parma-Lakewood. Sadly, over 40% of victims were the elderly. Those who believed that mastering technology was enough to thrive in the modern age ultimately blindsided by spectacular scams. Are you sure when ordering a cookware set or mini heater online that what arrives won't be an empty box, or worse, a brick wrapped in foam? People now spend money with anxiety, the clearest sign of a destabilized economy. While we flounder in an unresolved crisis, some e-commerce platforms quietly profit. According to Ohio Consumer Watch, within 3 months, one popular social network pocketed around $28 million from unverified vendors. And while the money flows out trust, the very thing keeping life moving dries up day by day. So many are forced to return to old methods: flea markets, group buys, exchanges within small communities. In some neighborhoods in East Cleveland, people organize trust markets on weekends, where every item must be inspected by hand. But how many of us still have the strength to verify authenticity each time we want to buy a toothbrush, a set of clothes, or a pack of baby diapers? Cleveland lacks neither technology nor demand. It lacks one thing: the trust that you can still safely spend money where you live. Number 4, New Mexico. No one would have thought that in the vastness of America, buying a carton of milk could truly become a gamble. But that is the reality unfolding in Albuquerque, the capital of New Mexico. Located in the desert, far from any major ports or logistics hubs, Albuquerque was never a bustling place. But it has never been as blatantly abandoned as it is now. When Canada retaliated with a 35% tax on food essential goods and canned products imported from the US, major retail chains quickly restructured their supply chains. And New Mexico, nestled in the middle of barren land, was the first to be scratched off the priority list. Transport companies have little interest in delivering here. Rising oil prices since the beginning of the year have pushed transportation costs per mile higher, while the state's rapidly deteriorating road system is no longer appealing for long-haul routes. Containers that used to carry goods from Canada to the southwest are now redirected to major seaports, where goods are distributed faster and yield higher profits. As a result, in Albuquerque, goods have become scarce and prices have skyrocketed. It's not just about the shortage of milk or diapers, but of everything a normal family needs to survive a week: packaged food, medicine, hygiene, products, even laundry detergent. A Consumer Watch NM survey in June 2025 showed that over half of consumers here had been forced to buy products suspected to be counterfeit or of poor quality, an alarming figure for a city once considered affordable yet stable. This hardship is further compounded as the government slashes welfare programs. New Mexico has always been among the states with the highest proportion of residents relying on SNAP and Medicaid. Yet at the start of 2025, nearly 300,000 people here had their access to food and medical assistance reduced or completely cut off. People no longer just choose between dinner and medicine. They must also weigh whether they can survive without the ability to shop for groceries. In suburban areas like South Valley or Borealis, some mothers have to drive nearly 50 miles to find a store with genuine baby formula. Some elderly people now live on instant noodles and canned beans because they're cheap, easy to store, and require little cooking. And even if you have a home, an old car, a part-time job, you may still live no differently than a homeless person in a city devoid of goods. Of course, people are trying to cope. Churches set up food sharing stations, and collective purchasing groups operate as they did in times of rationing. But even they don't know when the next batch of goods will arrive or if it will even be safe to use. And this is just the beginning. Can you guess the fifth name on today's list? Number 5, Illinois. Chicago once made the rest of America envious with its abundant consumption. From suburban hypermarkets to inner-city pharmacies, everything seemed readily available. People didn't have to worry much when stepping out. They knew they'd find what they needed, whether it was medicine for their mother or milk for their child. But now, a different feeling is creeping into urban life, the unease of spending money. In neighborhoods like Englewood or West Garfield Park, even buying a simple bottle of hand sanitizer or a packet of cold medicine has become a risky journey. Familiar stores, Walgreens, CVS, Target, have simultaneously withdrawn not because of financial loss, but because they can no longer protect staff and goods from increasingly blatant theft. In just the first 3 months of the year, over 4,300 retail theft cases were recorded. That number is not just a statistic, but a reality many residents face daily. With supermarkets gone, many resort to online orders. But even receiving a package at your doorstep is no longer guaranteed. Reports from Consumer Safety Illinois show a sharp rise in post-delivery theft, especially among the elderly, those who find it harder to go out and are easier targets when followed. A retired engineer living in southern Chicago recounted how a nearly $90 blood pressure monitor order for his wife was stolen just minutes after delivery. The camera caught everything, but no one took responsibility. A complete loss. Yet what worsens the situation doesn't stem from within the city, but from across the border. Canada's 35% tax on U.S. consumer goods has severely disrupted the supply chains between the two countries, chains that once passed through Chicago as a key link. Familiar items to locals such as multivitamins, disinfectants, health supplements from Canada are now scarce or entirely absent. Major distribution chains no longer prioritize Chicago as before because they lack supplies and cannot risk an unstable market. In contrast, just a few hundred miles north, residents in Windsor, Canada, still shop regularly casually without having to look over their shoulders. Shelves are full, prices stable, with no need for 3 security guards stationed at the entrance of every pharmacy, as is the case south of the border. This difference stems not just from tariffs, but from stronger consumer protection policies and a more robust social support system, something Chicagoans are gradually losing. Number 6, California. The next strange story happens in San Jose, where you can summon a self-driving car to your doorstep, but cannot buy a roll of toilet paper without knowing how to use an app. It's hard to believe, but in the heart of Silicon Valley, home to the world's leading tech minds, buying a simple item has become a challenge for tens of thousands. Older residents, retirees, longtime families in San Jose are being pushed aside simply because they can't keep up with how the world now operates. Familiar stores no longer have staff. Facial recognition systems, contactless scanners, app-based payments. What was meant to be convenient has become an invisible barrier. A retired engineer who once worked for Amazon shared that every time he needed to place an order for his wife, he had to ask his granddaughter for help. Not because he lacked money, but because he forgot his password, couldn't keep up with updates, couldn't handle app errors when the system flagged an order freeze. What's more heartbreaking is that he is not alone. According to a Pew Research survey in 2025, nearly 40% of those over 60 in San Jose do not use shopping apps. Nearly a quarter do not have an Amazon account or cannot remember their login details. Meaning in a city where technology is hailed as the key to liberating life, there are still thousands struggling just to buy a bottle of hand soap. The situation worsens as retail service devices such as POS machines, security sensors, recognition systems are paralyzed due to a shortage of replacement parts from Canada. Previously, many crucial components of automated retail systems were imported from Canadian tech firms. But after Canada retaliated against the US with a 35% tax on tech exports, the entire supply chain was disrupted. In many neighborhoods like Midtown or Japantown, smart stores frequently freeze. Doors won't open, machines won't function, orders won't process. And with no staff on site anymore, customers don't know whom to turn to. Canada is different. After imposing taxes on the US, its government simultaneously launched domestic support packages to modernize its retail systems. In Vancouver or Toronto, many supermarkets still offer both technology and human support, especially for the elderly. Canadians entering a store can choose to use self-checkout machines, or meet real people, have real conversations. But in San Jose, once technology fails, everything stops. The question arises if a city like San Jose, wealthy, advanced, modern, can still leave its residents feeling abandoned. What will happen to rural areas where technology has never truly taken hold? Is this the future America is heading toward? A future where even those who create progress cannot live alongside it. Number 7, Texas. After just several days of rain, Texas became a place where shopping was impossible. Not because people were poor or supermarkets ran out of goods, but because the supply chain had completely collapsed. The logistics system that once allowed Texas to deliver anything within 24 hours was brought down by just a few severe storms. Caryville, Fredericksburg, once peaceful hill country regions were suddenly cut off from transportation networks. Roads washed away bridges, broken distribution centers flooded and without power. But natural disasters are only half the story. The other half, which few notice, comes from Canada. In July 2025, it was again the 35% tax targeting technology products, transport equipment, and supply chain components. This meant from cold storage sensors to truck navigation systems, from cooling systems for frozen storage centers to chips for logistics systems. All became more expensive or scarce. Imported goods that once quietly powered the US logistics chain, especially in inland states like Texas, have now stalled or vanished. Texas Hill Country suffers a double blow. On one side, natural disasters. On the other, the invisible wall of tariffs between the two nations. Facing the cost dilemma, logistics companies prioritized easier routes, near ports, near factories more profitable. And those mountainous communities with small populations and unstable infrastructure cast aside. Thus, after the floods, Texans, right in the middle of a wealthy state, had to live in a state of waiting. Deliveries suspended indefinitely, supermarkets empty. Essential goods like milk, toilet paper, cold medicine suddenly became hard to find. Though large corporations tried to help bringing relief food via mobile kitchens or emergency funds, these were only temporary solutions. When Canadian imports are overpriced and replacement parts unavailable, even repairing a logistics hub becomes an unsolvable problem. And this is what unsettles people most. Everything collapsed not because of war, not because of economic crisis, but merely from a rainstorm compounded by a neighbor's tax clampdown. Everything you thought was solid supply chains, supermarkets, fast delivery, turns out to be more fragile than imagined. Texas once defined the logistics standard for all of America. But now, this very state exposes a harsh truth: when extreme weather meets fractured international trade, even living in the heart of America cannot guarantee you won't be left behind. And if Texas, with its modern infrastructure and abundant resources, can fall into such a plight, what awaits places like the Arctic regions of Alaska? Number 8, Alaska. In Seattle, people can order an iPad and receive it within an hour. But in Kotzebue, Alaska, just to get a carton of milk, one might have to wait for next week's flight if the weather permits and if the plane is still operational. Everyone knows Alaska is remote and isolated. But in 2025, when Canada imposed a 35% tax on fuel and transportation equipment to retaliate against US trade policies, things became worse than ever. Alaska relies on air routes and ferries to bring goods from the mainland. When fuel costs skyrocketed and passenger numbers dropped, many small airlines, the lifeline of towns like Nome, Barrow, Bethel, were forced to cut flights or even withdraw entirely from remote routes. At the same time, Walmart, Cars, Safeway, and a number of major supermarkets shut down unprofitable locations, including those in Anchorage and many residential areas in Fairview. Suddenly, people lost a basic option, a place to buy weekly essentials. A post on a community forum in Fairbanks noted I had to drive more than 3 hours across 2 frozen roads just to buy baby formula for my grandchild. This reality becomes even harsher when compared to people in northern Canada. Despite living in similarly harsh climates, they still receive food subsidies through the Nutrition North Canada program. Meanwhile, in the US Alaska, though, a full-fledged state rich in resources and contributing significantly to the nation, has become a place where even shampoo feels like a luxury. Food prices in Alaska are now 15 to 20% higher than the national average, according to the US Department of Labor. But in communities of 400 to 500 people, that figure is no longer just a statistic. It is a daily reality where bread can cost nearly $10. Eggs exceed $9, and people must choose between eating or paying the heating bill. In 2025, although Amazon had expanded deliveries to more than 13,000 zip codes, including Alaska slow internet high shipping fees and unreliable delivery schedules, made this service more of a beautiful promise than a practical solution. In Nome, if you order AA batteries, you might receive them in the summer or never. Number 9, Nevada, Las Vegas, the city where a single AA battery is worth more than a banknote. Beneath the dazzling lights of the Strip lie hundreds of miles of dark tunnels where thousands of people live precariously, without supermarkets, without stores, without consumer rights like the rest of society. According to The Shine, a light foundation, more than 1,500 people live underground in Las Vegas, an unprecedented figure. Meanwhile, above ground where tourists flock daily, lunch can cost hundreds of dollars, imported wine and goods still fill the shelves. Two contrasting worlds within the same city. Then Canada struck with a 35% tax on U.S. consumer goods, including many items previously produced or packaged up north such as canned food, personal care items, and medical products. This seemingly distant retaliation hit hard at discount stores in Nevada, which rely on low-cost supply chains, particularly goods routed through California, where logistics costs have soared to unprecedented levels. Stores like Dollar Tree Mayo's, and even some independent pharmacies began to scale back or withdraw from low-profit areas. The poor in Las Vegas, not only those living in the sewers, but also working families, retirees on welfare, once relied on these stores to buy basic food, cold medicine batteries, toilet paper. But as discount chains disappeared, they not only lost places to shop, but also lost access to a part of life itself. Goods are not always out of stock, but sometimes they become invisible, simply not meant for them. Meanwhile, high-end supermarket chains like Whole Foods Eataly and luxury food counters at five-star hotels continued operating as usual thanks to separate supply chains serving wealthier clientele. This marked the moment when Las Vegas ceased to be a city of consumption for all, instead becoming a clear model of a tiered economy. Not everyone became poorer, it's just that the poor were excluded from the system. A relief worker in the tunnel areas recalled that during one supply distribution, many people asked for AA batteries for their flashlights more than they asked for bread. Things that seem small become luxuries because there's nowhere left to buy them unless you have a car internet, a bank card, and a home to receive deliveries. This isn't just the story of those living underground. When a city like Las Vegas, once proud to be a shopping and spending paradise, begins to see its service zones shrink, it shows that no one is immune to changes in the distribution economy. And when Canada chooses to strike at the mass supply chain, those harmed aren't the wealthy consumers, but the entire class, living paycheck to paycheck. Prepare yourself. We are approaching the end where the biggest question is no longer who is rich, who is poor, but who is still being served. Number 10, Washington, D.C. Perhaps the final story is also the most special. In the place where national laws are written, there are citizens who can't afford a bottle of cooking oil. Right beneath the shadow of the Capitol, among the solemn concrete blocks of the nation's capital, are long lines of people standing in the sun waiting to enter the only small grocery store still open within several miles. Some people stood there just to buy eggs. Not because the stock temporarily ran out, but because in areas like Anacostia or Deanwood, home to mostly low-income workers, stores are gradually disappearing. Over 30% of medium and small supermarkets in Southeast and Northeast DC have shut down in just over a year. No fanfare, no warning. There are many reasons: skyrocketing rent, theft-related costs outpacing profits, and a logistics system weakened since the COVID-19 pandemic. But the final push came from the North Canada, when Ottawa imposed a 35% tax on hundreds of U.S. consumer goods as a trade retaliation. Many food, pharmaceutical, and essential goods distributors in the capital region simultaneously raised prices. DC, heavily dependent on federal supply chains and inland ports, was directly affected. Those living in wealthy areas of the city can still shop at Whole Foods, still get Instacart deliveries in 30 minutes. But for those without a car, unfamiliar with technology, or no longer able to wait for online orders that get canceled repeatedly, everything becomes out of reach. In a place where government intervention should be, the swiftest policies are slower than real needs. Major distribution corporations show little interest in keeping stores open in low-income neighborhoods. Fragile communities are now turning into consumption deserts. No supermarkets, no pharmacies, no small drugstores. Residents have to pool money to hire shared rides, buy rice and frozen meat together. Some community centers even had to set up emergency funds to supply essential goods to the elderly and the isolated. And when people in the heart of America can't afford a bottle of cooking oil without taking 3 bus transfers and 2 phone apps, perhaps what needs rewriting isn't just the laws, but our understanding of what constitutes the most basic human right of access. Washington, D.C. doesn't lack lights, but that light seems increasingly unable to reach its lowest corners. The America of 2025 is gradually becoming unrecognizable to its own people. Not because of a loss of technology, but because of a loss of access to what once seemed most basic, from food and medicine to the safety of shopping itself. And does your city still have enough stores operating? Have you ever had to give up something essential because it was too expensive or the order never arrived? Share your thoughts, because you may not be the only one feeling left behind. This video does not promote division or encourage pessimism. All content is compiled for the purpose of analysis, reflection, and sparking discussion based on real-world trends. We respect the U.S. Constitution and current regulations and seek to raise public awareness by sharing things that mainstream media sometimes overlooks.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.